But right here, I gave as an example of right where it could mean like the devil, right? Satan. All right, so I'm going to read verse 1. It says, "Then Satan stood up against Israel and incited David to number Israel." Right, and then so David said to Joab and the commanders of the army, "Go number Israel from Beersheba to Dan and bring me a report that I may know their number." But Joab, right, the military commander, he recognized that this was wrong. Right, and he said, "May the Lord add to his people 100 times and as many as they are. Are they not my lord the king, all of them my lord's servants?" But he says, "Then why should my lord require this? Why should it be a cause of guilt for Israel?" Right, Joab said, "This is wrong," right? And he figured like this is wrong for you to take a census. Right, but why is it wrong? Right, because the Bible never explicitly says why it was a sin, right? God ends up punishing David, right? But why was David taking a census a sin, right? And I looked this up and I wasn't satisfied with the answers I was getting. There were a lot of weird different answers, but I think like I'm gonna tell you what I think, right? If you read 1 Chronicles 20, right? If you read, it talks about capturing Rabbah, right? And the Philistine giants killed. At the end, it talks about Goliath having a brother who ends up being slain, right? So they're slaying the giants. Israel's having all these military victories, right? And then you get to 1 Chronicles 21 with David, right? If David's having all these successes, how can he not, like, in his heart, like, begin at least a little bit like, man, God is just with me, like, I can't lose type of thing. Because David never, like, he was just having all these victories. Right? And so you know that when it says a Satan stood up, right? A spiritual enemy, right? A spiritual darkness influenced David to take the census, to sin. Right? It was a spiritual influence that influenced David to sin. Right? And it appealed to his flesh. Right? Because it knew how David probably thought in his heart, and so it just brought those out, right? Let me like tempt him in that way. Right? And so like I say that also, okay, let me go to Judges, right? I want to read from Judges 16. And this is with Samson and Delilah, right? Samson was a really strong dude, right? And he would always kill a bunch of Philistines or whatever. And then, I don't know if y'all know the story, but like Delilah was like a girl who was his weakness. He loved Delilah, right? And she was a foreign woman, right? And they weren't supposed to marry foreign women. But he didn't care. He loved her. All right, but I'm going to read from verse 15. Judges 16:15 says, "Then she said to him," right? This is the third time, right? Because he's lying with her, and he would like all the time he would lie with her, and she would ask me like, or she would ask Samson, "What's the source of your strength, right? How are you so strong? Tell me." And then he was like, "If you tie me up like this, then I will be bound and I won't be able to break out of it." He would just lie to her, and then every time everything she said, she would try it, and then she'd be like, "The Philistines are here," and then he would always just break out of it like nothing, right? And she did that 3 times, right? And this is after that, right? Because then she's tired of it. Like they've tried and they failed, and so she says to him, "How can you say I love you when you won't even confide in me?" This is her telling him, "This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength." She says with such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. And then it says, so he told her everything. "No razor has ever been used on my head," right? He said, "Because I've been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me." Right? "And I would become as weak as any other man." And then when Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent the word to the rulers of the Philistines. She said, "Come back once more. He has told me everything." So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands, right, to pay her. And then it says, after putting him to sleep on her lap, right, it says that she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so began to subdue him. And his strength left him. Yeah. Right? And then she called, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." And then he awoke from his sleep and thought, "I'll go out as before, right, and shake myself free," right, like I've always have, right, because I've always broke free. It was never too hard. But he says, but he did not know that the Lord had left him, right? And then it says the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza, binding him with bronze shackles, and they set him grinding grain in prison. They ended up gouging his eyes, and they use him as as an entertainer, right, and that's what happens, like, in Philistia. That's what they end up doing to him. All right, but how it says it, he did not know that the Lord had left him, right? And I want to talk about this because in my life, right, I've been feeling weak, right? I feel like my strength has almost, like, left me. And it starts, like, with, like, how David, right, how it appeals, like, to my flesh, right, the things that I want, and it's a spiritual darkness. And I know, like, even when I'm trying to do good, there's like this darkness that just I like when I sleep, I can't, like, escape, right? It's just, it appeals to my flesh and it tempts me. And it's like how Samson, right, Delilah is like a representation of like the world, right? He flirted with the world. In James 4, it says, "You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity of God? Being a friend of the world makes you an enemy of the Lord," right? That's how it says it. And so we see that when Samson, right? Samson's flirting with Delilah. He loves Delilah. Like he's just flirting with the world, right? It gets to the point where she cuts off the source of his strength, right? And he's just thinking, I'll just break free. I'll always have it, right? Until he didn't know that the Lord had left him. And I feel like that's how it's been like with me, right? I feel like I've been strong and I've had like attacks, right? But I've always had the strength to fight it, right? Because the Lord had been with me. Like with David, right? He was thinking like, let me number Israel. Let me take the census to like, let me put a number. Let me quantify the extent of my strength, right? Like the more people I have, the stronger I am, right? Let's put a number on it. Let's measure it, right? And that was a sin because his strength was never in the numbers. It was never in the people or them or in himself. The strength was just the fact that the Lord was with him. That was it, right? It didn't matter how many people he had. And it's like by him trying to put a number on it, he was trying to quantify it, right? But that was wrong, right? And then, like with me, right? When I struggle, like this week, I've struggled like a lot, right? Because I feel like the enemy tries to cut me off in my strength. And I find like myself, even when I flirt with the world, I'm like, God, it's not even a sin, but I find myself more susceptible to things when I do. Like even just when I listen to music, I find myself more susceptible to sin, right? Like non-Christian music, literally. And I feel like me doing that is like kind of flirting with the world. And it gets to the point like I'll just flirt a little bit, and it just slowly, it just pulls you into the point where it just cuts off your strength, right? And I feel like this week I was like, God, I went in prayer. I was like, God, this is too much. Like I have no strength within me, right? I have no strength. Why? Right? I'm dead. Like I'm weak. I'm dry, right? But why? Right? Why do I have no strength? Right? And it's because like the enemy just like cut me off, right? Just cut off the source of my strength, and I felt far from God, who is the source of my strength, right? And so as I was praying, I was like, God, I can't do this. Like I was so like dry. I was like, God, I don't want to preach. I don't want to do anything. Like I'm done. Like I can't. Like it's not that I don't want to, but I don't have any strength left within me. I have nothing, right? Because you have been the source of my strength, and I can't do it. And I was gonna delete my little YouTube videos. I was gonna do everything. I was gonna just stop and say like, Mom, maybe I'm just gonna sit down today. But I was like, God, if you don't intercede for me now, I'm just gonna fall. And I was quoting. I was like, God, doesn't it say that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord? But it says, and he delighteth in his way. But though he fall, you said that you would uphold us. So I was like, God, why are you allowing me to fall, right? You have to intercede, because if not, I'm going to just fall. And if I fall, God, you can't say that I didn't try, and it's not that I didn't want to, because I want to. But I can't, because I don't have you like that. I don't have that strength. You are my strength, but I don't feel you, so I'm going to just fall. When the enemy comes, I'm thinking that I'm going to just fight like I've always have. Always be strong and just resist like I always have. But when I don't have you with me, they're just going to overtake me, right? Because I didn't know, the Lord is not with me like he was then. But I want to read 2 Corinthians 1. And this is Paul, and he says, in verse 8, he says, we do not want you to be uninformed. He says, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, for beyond our ability to endure, right? So that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt like we had received the sentence of death, right? So he says we were tried above which we were able, right? You always hear, right? God will never give you more than what you can handle. And that's usually, they usually read 1 Corinthians 10:13. But right here he's saying, right? He says we were under great pressure beyond our ability to endure. He said we couldn't take it. It was too much for us to endure. So much that we hated life itself, right? We just wanted to die. But then he just says, right? But why? And he says, but this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. And he says he has delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. On him we have set our hope, so that he will continue to deliver us. As you help us by your prayers, then many will give thanks on our behalf for the gracious favor granted us in the answer to the prayers of many. He said, thank y'all for praying for us, because, that helps. But he's like, we had to just rely on God, right? And that's like what I did, just in prayer. I was like, God, I can't do it no more. I don't want to. I want to keep going with everything in me, but I just can't, right? This is just, it's too much, right? And so I was like, God, you have to intercede, because if you don't, then I'm going to just fall, right? But what it taught me to do is just give up, right? I'm like, God, I'm not going to try, Or I'm just not going to try. Like, you have to do it. You have to uphold me so I can know that it's you and that it's not me and that it's not anything of my own power, my own doing, right? It's not my own strength, but Lord, I'm going to just rely on you and your strength, right? Because you are the source of my strength, right? I mean, that's pretty much it.